In the name of God, Amen. When I was 9 years old, my grandparents gave me a copy of the King James Bible. I still have it, although I confess I haven't opened it for a long time. But when I was 9, its 400-year-old English was often way beyond me. But I loved what I found in the back of that Bible, especially the maps. There was also a section called A Harmony of the Four Gospels. I suppose somebody had been troubled by the fact that Matthew and Mark and Luke and John didn't always tell the story of Jesus in the same way. So they tried to put them all together and make one coherent story. When I grew up, I realized that that's a big mistake. When I was in Hong Kong this spring, I gave a series of presentations at the cathedral called Let Each Gospel Speak for Itself. I actually stole the title from a book written by Rhys Williams when he was rector here at Christ Church back in the 60s. The point I wanted to make was that each of the four gospel writers had his own agenda and told the story of Jesus to fit that agenda. So one evening, somebody raised their hand and asked, well, which one is your favorite? I confessed that I was especially partial to Luke. And then they asked me why. And I realized it's because I think Luke is the one who had the clearest vision of why what Jesus told us is good news. And because of all the four, Luke is the one who sees most clearly that that good news is not just about what happens to us when we die, it matters in the here and the now. And it's stories like the one we just heard that I'm talking about. Think about it, it's the Sabbath. So Jesus was where he always was on a Sabbath morning, teaching in a synagogue. And a woman walks in with a back so crippled that she hasn't been able to stand up straight for 18 years. And Jesus does what we'd expect him to do in a situation like that. Ma'am, you are set free from your ailment. And she stands up straight. What a moment. What a sign of God's power at work in the world. And nobody can doubt that it's an amazing thing they've witnessed. So you'd assume that everybody in the synagogue would be in an uproar of celebration. But no, the leader of the congregation has another opinion. There are 6 days on which work ought to be done. Come on those days and be cured, and not on the Sabbath day. Honestly, we might wonder if we heard right. How could anybody not be thrilled at what has happened? But by now, I suspect that Jesus was used to that kind of reaction because it's an attitude he ran into far too often when he did what he did and said what he said. Now, I know it's always dangerous to think we understand other people's motivations, but it seems to me as if the problem the leader had was that he let the rules blind him to the pain and the need right in front of him. And I think we might even dig a little deeper. Just what is it about rules? Well, rules are there to be obeyed, and they're generally meant to be for a good purpose. If I stop at a red light, it's because if I don't, I may get hit, or I may hit somebody else. But in case I don't care about that, there's another reason to stop. If I don't, I may very well get a ticket. Breaking rules carries a penalty. If not, they aren't really rules, they're just suggestions or warnings. Keeping the Sabbath and all the other laws that shape the Jewish religion has one purpose: to honor God. And being faithful means keeping the rules. But behind the rules is another motivation, the fear of punishment. Because the Hebrew scriptures are full of stories about what could happen to you if you break the rules. And it's not pretty. So if you take those stories seriously, your sense of who God is will probably be a scary one. Yes, God is a good God. Yes, God gives us gifts, life, and all the good things that go with it. But you'd better be careful, because if you don't, remember God is in charge, and who knows what may happen. Fear can become a powerful motivation to keep us on the straight and narrow. Our ancestors were convinced that not only should we worry about what happens to us when we die, we might need to worry that God will sneak up on us when we least expect it and make us worry and make us sorry we ran that red light or we ate that pork chop. And Jesus isn't having it. Jesus knew that it's not that God doesn't care what we do. Of course God cares, but God is not the kind of God who goes around smiting people because we haven't paid enough attention. God knows, Jesus knows, and we ought to know that fear is not a good motivator for a relationship. And relationship is what God cares about the most. A few weeks ago, I went to my high school reunion, and of course, after we'd finished comparing ailments, the conversation turned to our memories of school. And we discovered that we'd all been terrified of our 6th grade teacher. Wow. I know now that she was actually a committed and even creative teacher, but that's not what we talked about. What stuck most in our minds was how scared we were of her and what she did to make us that way. And I think it's tragic that even today, for many Christians, if they think about God at all, they think about a giant heavenly version of my 6th grade teacher. Every time we ask the universe, why did this happen to me? We're suggesting that we might deserve what we're going through. As if we're thinking that somehow God might be angry enough with us to come after us. Well, that's not the God we meet in the story of Jesus. Jesus never talked about a God who is out to get us. He talked about a God who loves us exactly as we are, because God is a God who forgives, who doesn't hold grudges or exact vengeance. Luke's gospel is full of stories of people who assume their biggest and hardest job is to stay on God's good side, even if it means making somebody who hasn't stood up straight for 18 years wait another day. But God is not the vindictive parent making sure that their wayward child lives to regret it. God is the parent who waits patiently for the lost child to find themselves and come home, and then throws them a party. Maybe what Jesus understood and the synagogue leader didn't is as basic as being connected or not. You might look at the woman who couldn't stand up as simply a problem that can wait another day. Or you might look at her as Jesus saw her, someone who has been through 18 years of suffering and every day of whose pain matters. That's the trouble with putting rules ahead of people. It breaks the connection we're meant to feel, not just with some people, the ones we like to be with, but with all people. Because that connection is the truth about us. Rules are good when they save lives. They're good when they help us remember that we are not the center of the universe, but linked into a great web of relationship with all God's creation. But when the rules keep us from seeing and responding to one another, they become prisons. They lock us into our fear of getting it wrong, of making a mistake, of being punished by that 6th grade teacher in the sky. This morning, the letter to the Hebrews told us that our God is a consuming fire. You might think that means we'd better watch out or we'll get burned. But I think what God is interested in is burning up. Isn't people who break the rules, it's the blinders that keep us from seeing the way things really are and what really matters. Jesus told us over and over that we human beings matter to each other. We belong to each other. We care about each other and for each other. What better way to honor God on the Sabbath than by touching a suffering woman with healing and new life? Because we belong to each other, and that's the way God put the world together, and God won't rest until we finally get it. Amen.